Hey everyone, this is Nikki Buckaloo at the Seniors Real Estate Institute, and I am going to be presenting a topic today that is near and dear to my heart, and that is secrets to surviving the senior tsunami. This is designed mainly for real estate agents, but the truth of the matter is it could be for any professional who is serving the older adult or more mature clientele out there in any industry, really. And I've had a few people tell me that I have a little bit of pushback from people about this title of senior tsunami. There's an ongoing debate in various different circles out there about whether or not that is an appropriate term to describe the shift in demographics in our current day world, not just US, but all over the world. And some people say it's a negative thing in terms of calling it a tsunami, because a tsunami is essentially devastates whatever it hits. And so there's the implication that our aging demographic is a natural disaster or is negative. So let me just clarify right up front that the senior tsunami can either be a disaster or it can be an amazing thing that happens in our world. And it's all about how we approach it. And my perspective is that if we as professionals and families and individuals are not prepared for the shift in demographics, it could be a tsunami. It could be a disaster. But frankly, that's one of the reasons I do this webinar and why we do the trainings we do at the Seniors Real Estate Institute and in our local market with our local citizens, because it is important that we prepare for the needs that people have, and that we prepare for the things that are going to impact both the consumer, the senior adult themselves, their families, as well as us as professionals. So let's dive into the material. And just to kind of give you some perspective here, the National Association of Realtors is already reporting, and actually has been for about the past 4 years or so now, that 1 in 4 people that sell a home are over the age of 65. 1 in 4. So 25% of all sales already happening are older adults. And some are retired at that point, some are not. Actually, there's another statistic, I don't have a slide for it, but about 50% of sales involve someone over 55. So as people continue to have birthdays year after year, we're going to see an increase in the number of seniors who are selling. Now, let's just make a little point of clarification here, which is one of the reasons, again, that I do this webinar. There's a difference in the types of seniors. So not all seniors are the same, right? It's a very diverse demographic. So you've got people ranging in age from, depending on who you talk to, from 50 all the way to super centenarians at 114 or 15. But as a general rule, I try not to make it about age as much as about circumstance, because there does reach a point, and people do reach a point in their lives where it makes more sense to downsize. And so what are downsizers? Well, I'm a downsizer, frankly. I'm in my 40s, and my husband and I raised our kids that are out of the house. We downsized into a 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath condo. We love it. It's maintenance free. We can come and go as we please and not feel like we have to worry about a yard or security or any of that. So there are definitely a lot of people out there looking at this big house that they're in, and or a big piece of land, maybe acreage or a large yard, and they're saying, I don't really need or want this anymore. And so they're downsizing. Now, in that demographic that is older, unlike my husband and I, who had, we've owned 24, 25 homes, a lot of my clients in my local market are 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the same home. Many of my clients have been in the same home for 40 or more years. They bought it after they either relocated here with a job, or maybe retired out of the military service and kind of made Oklahoma City their home. Whatever the case may be, but I will tell you that the agents that I train and that I deal with most, this is the client that can be the most challenging for us as real estate professionals because of a lot of reasons. And we'll talk about those as we go through here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide, which is what 5 of the things. I say not everything every agent needs to know, but at least 5 of the essentials that real estate agents need to know. All real estate agents, whether you're going to specialize in working with older adults or not. If 1 in 4 of your sales is going to involve a senior adult, whether you're on the buying or selling side, then these are going to be important things for you to understand. 1, the motivations for selling, the changing priorities and goals that mature adults have, that downsizers have, a need for different resources, not just the standard real estate resources that we all have accumulated over the years, but some specialized resources. Our mature audience, they want a more personalized experience. We'll talk more about that. And then empowerment and advocacy. And depending on the client, or if it's a family member with an aging parent or someone that's vulnerable, like with dementia, there's definitely an empowerment and advocacy component to what we need to do and be as agents. So let's talk about the first one, which is the motivations that people have for selling, mainly selling. In the first category, it may be selling and buying, but not all of our clients are buying. Many of our clients are not, and they're going to be in different categories. So the first motivation, and by the way, this is all in a free report that we provide on our website as well. And in the report is called the 5 Essentials for Serving Downsizing Seniors. So you can find it on the Seniors Real Estate Institute website as well. But this slide just kind of outlines 3 of them. The motivation of amenity seeking, right? So, okay, my house is no longer new and fresh, and I'm kind of looking around and thinking I would like to have a different floor plan, or I'd like to have a house with a smaller yard but higher ceilings, or maybe I want to live near a golf course. Maybe I want to live near the beach. Maybe I would like to have a place that is close to where my grandkids live. Those are people who are seeking amenities, and the amenities might be relative to the house, or the amenities might be relative to the area. Okay, these are usually going to be people who are early in retirement, or maybe maybe they were caregivers for parents for a long time as well, not just for their own kids, but for parents. And that job is now complete, and they can make a change in their life that's for them. Okay. And so we'll talk a little bit more about them here in a moment. But then you have your planners, and then you also have people who are need-based. So let's talk about that amenity seeking a little bit more. I have found that when I am doing trainings for Seniors Real Estate Institute and people want to get into this niche of seniors, a lot of times this amenity seeking client is the one that they are hoping to attract. And it's a very different clientele than the planners and the needs or crisis-based folks. And the reason is because the amenity seekers really aren't different than any other audience that we serve as agents, right? So they're enthusiastic, they're excited about the new place that they're moving to. They don't have a lot of emotional attachment to the old place. In a lot of cases, they're not really downsizing. They might actually be upsizing. They might be moving into a larger space, or someplace. I've had seniors that retired and decided to buy acreage so that they'd have a farm, or have livestock, or have a garden. So the amenity seeking bunch is really regular real estate, is what I call it. It's regular real estate. The only difference might be when you have someone who is seeking a 55 and older community, an age segregated community, or something to that effect. But in my mind, they actually don't fall necessarily under amenity seeking. I'll tell you why. They fall under planners. And because as I did my research on my doctorate, I interviewed couples to find out what their process of making a decision about where to move looked like. And most of my clients, well, all of my my research participants were 75 or older because that was the cutoff. And that age group and that group of people, they were looking at planning for the what ifs in life. And so when people are moving into a 55 and older community, they could be amenity seeking, or they may not even tell you as an agent, but in the back of their mind, they're planning ahead for what if I can no longer take care of this big house anymore? What if I no longer have the ability to take care of my yard or my landscaping? What if? They're planning. And sometimes they're planning for what if something happens to me and I am disabled or pass away. How does my wife handle this? Or how does my husband handle this? So the planners are an interesting group because they're still independent in most cases. They're still making their own decisions. They are typically very thought-oriented. So they're planning ahead, they're thinking, they're analyzing, they're shopping, they're doing some homework ahead of time. And so they really want to be in control of their decision making, and that's really important to them in this process. So the time, this is where agents kind of get caught up. The time that it can take for someone who's a planner to make a decision and actually move can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So it's interesting when I go on consultations these days, I don't go into it thinking it's a listing appointment. I go into it thinking it's a consultation. Because if they're planners, they just need data. They need information from us. And then they'll make a decision whenever the time is right for them. So the next client that we come across as agents are needs-based or even sometimes crisis-based. And for those folks, it's more about urgency. They have a particular need and they've got to make a pretty quick decision. And sometimes these moves, most often, in fact, these moves are involuntary moves. It's not a voluntary thing where they go, oh, I love this place and I'm going to make a move and I'm okay with that. There's a lot of angst behind this. And there's also a lot of moving parts. So think about someone who's moving out of need or crisis as an agent. We're concerned about selling the house. But this client and this family, in a lot of cases, the family's involved, they're also worried about things like the stuff in the house. What are we going to do with the furniture? What are we going to do with the household items? Because they're not going to fit in this place that this client is moving. So there are a lot of moving parts to this particular type of move. So, as you can see just from those 3 or 4 slides that I just showed you, treating all home sellers the same is a mistake. When you move in your 40s, it's not the same as moving in your 80s, for instance. And it can be a big challenge sometimes, even for the planners, to emotionally let go of a home that they've lived in for many, many years. And so for some people, it's not about price and it's not about the appeal of another house. It's about how they feel. And that's a whole nother webinar that I do on another date. But for now, it's just important to remember as you go out and talk with clients that are retirees, that you ask yourself, what is their motivation for making this change? Okay, so the second essential that we've got to focus on as an agent is what is the priority and the goals of this client? And we all have been taught in real estate that the sellers have 3 goals. They want to get the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of hassle. We're all taught that, right? And you can kind of just count on it. And that's not necessarily untrue for our senior clients, the ones that have lived there for a long time. But what I found is that the priorities are not always in the same order. So you may find that people are less concerned about price, more concerned with timing, or maybe they're more concerned with not having a lot of hassle and less about price and timing. So there's really, oops, sorry about that. scooted to the next slide. So the priority may for some people be that I would like to sell it as is. I don't want to do a lot of fluff. I don't want to add staging. I don't want to do any remodels. I don't want to paint or carpet. I just want it sold, and I want it sold quickly. And so I think it's important as an agent that when you go out to a client's house that you look at it as, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. I'll tell you a quick story about it. A client that I worked with in Austin, Texas, when I was selling real estate there. And I had specialized with seniors for many years in Oklahoma, and then had left the sales side and was managing real estate practices and coaching agents. And then when we moved to Austin, I decided to get back into the sales side again. And I went to several senior living communities and made relationships with them there. And that's a big part of where my business comes from. And I got a referral to a woman who was moving to a community. And she had already met with a realtor, and she wasn't necessarily committed, so she wanted a second opinion. And so I went out and met with this woman, and she had a lovely home. It was pretty dated. She lived there for many, many years. She was the original owner. It was built in the 60s. But it was in a very hot part of Austin and a very highly sought after area. And I knew that the house was going to sell quickly. But when I went in to meet with her, I sat down at her dining room table and I just asked her, I said, tell me about yourself. And she kind of looked at me strangely, and I said, is that okay with you? And she said, well, yeah, I just thought you'd want to talk about the house. And I said, well, we'll get to that, but I'd love to hear a little bit about you. And we just started talking. We started having a conversation. And in the conversation, she started to talk about her experience with the other agent. And she said, I just really am not, even though I'm excited about moving, I'm not excited about letting go of my home. And she said, the other agent came in and immediately I didn't like her. And I said, really? And I said, well, what was that about? And she said, well, she pointed to the drapes in her dining room and she said, the agent told me that those were no longer in style and I would need to take those down. And that I was going to need to carpet and paint and change out this and that and the other. And she went through this litany of things that this agent had told her she would need to do. And so when she finished, I asked her if she would like for me to give her my opinion, and if she would like for me to give her some options of what she could do to get her home sold. And she said, yes, I would like that very much. So we went through her house and we looked around, and she showed me all the different things about her home that she loved. And when we sat back down at the table, I told her that while the other agent wasn't wrong, that some of those things would be great to do to her house, they would only be wrong if that wasn't her goal. So let's talk about, what is your goal? And she said, well, I just don't want to have to do anything. I just want to move. And I said, great. Well, let's talk about that. These are the price points of a house like yours. If you do these things the other agent mentioned, and I can make some recommendations too, or we could put it on the market and sell it for this price, and you wouldn't have to touch it. You wouldn't have to do a thing. Her face lit up and she was so excited she could hardly stand it. The house had appreciated so much that she couldn't even fathom the as-is price. And so she was questioning me. She said, are you sure? Do you think I can get that much for my house and not have to do all the things that other agent told me I was going to have to do? I said, absolutely. I feel very confident. Okay, so she said, well, then that's what I'm going to do. And we listed her home as is, and it sold in one day. She had multiple offers, and she felt so good about that. And I thought to myself after that experience, I thought, why did that agent feel the need to only present the highest price point she could get if she did all those things? And it was because the agent did not understand the different priorities of a long-time homeowner. Now, a person in their 30s or 40s, myself, I would have said to that agent, oh my gosh, then let's do it. Let's get some contractors in here. If I can make $100,000 more on this house by doing these things, sure, let's do it. But that wasn't this client's goal. Her goal was simple and fast. And the money was not her issue at all. So we got to find out, what is it that this client is seeking? And then we need to work with them and their goals, not just our own goals. By the way, would that agent have made more commission on another $100,000? Absolutely. So I actually took, a lesser commission by helping her sell it as is, but it was her goal. It was about her and not about me making more money. All right, so priorities. We know motivation is important. We know priorities are important. Let's talk about resources. One of the reasons, by the way, that a lot of longtime homeowners, particularly older adults, don't want to do repairs to their house and don't want to make changes is because they don't really have the resources, meaning professionals who can come in and do that, at their disposal. And as agents, of course, we can make those recommendations, but they don't know that. So in many cases, what they really need they need solutions to problems. And in many cases, the solutions to those problems come in the form of a referral to a resource. So I've listed here a few useful resources that older adult clients often benefit from. And some of them are in your regular, real estate toolkit, and others are some that you would have to actually go out and create. As a specialist working with seniors, in our training, what we do is we teach people how to go out and create these relationships so that they also become referral sources, right? So it's not just a task to have a list of people, it's actually building relationships with them, and you work well together. But it ultimately is there because the client's going to need these. And our clients many times hire us because we have this massive toolkit of people that are vetted, that are really good at helping them with the things that they fear most. So let's talk about some of these resources just so that you can kind of be thinking about who you have in your toolkit already and who you're going to need to add to your toolkit as you work with older adult clients and longtime homeowners. So the first one is a mover and a packer. And I know that sounds to most realtors I talk to, they go, really? There's plenty of movers out there. All you have to do is go online. Well, what you may not realize is that for a lot of our clientele that is older, if they're not tech savvy, or they don't even have a computer or don't have a support system to help them do that, getting a packer and mover is harder than you think. Nowadays, many of the major franchises, you have to do that online. You have to ask for an estimate online, put your address and everything in, your phone number, your email address, and many of our clients will not do that. They don't feel safe doing that. They don't understand the process. They want to pick up the phone and talk to someone. And if you can't do that anymore, it makes it more challenging. So we are able to connect them with a person, a live body, and in many cases facilitate getting the estimate and everything with them. So at the very least, if you're not going to specialize, but at the very least have a mover packer locally that you can connect them with an actual human being, and it's not just an online or an automated system. Move managers. I will tell you that this is a new industry within the last decade or so has really exploded. And in major markets, almost every major market, you're going to find a move manager or two, or three or four. In more rural areas, smaller markets, you may not. And they're not all calling themselves move managers. So there's a term that was coined by it's called a senior move manager by the National Association of Senior Move Managers, or NASM. And we're a part of that organization here locally in our real estate business and our move management practice. And I will tell you that move managers are essentially your solution to working with seniors. If you don't have one, you are one. Move manager will organize that packer and mover. They will help get the house cleaner. They'll help people pick what they're going to take, get it packed up, get it moved, get it reorganized in their new place, facilitate the things that need to be done to get people from point A to point B. So, okay, in your 40s, 50s, 60s even, you're perfectly capable of doing that yourself, right? Why do I need someone? Why would I want to pay someone to do that? Well, fast forward to, let's just use an age, which I don't like to do, but let's, for the sake of this conversation, say 85. And not only 85, but you had a recent knee surgery or hip surgery or fall, and you've lost your spouse in the last year or so. And now this massive undertaking seems unimaginable on your own. Maybe your kids live across the country. So a move manager is the person who's going to be like a surrogate child to help facilitate all those things. So some move managers also handle estate liquidation. Some will coordinate estate liquidation, but not all. Every move manager, just like realtors, have a different service offering. So you want to inquire about what it entails, what all they can or don't do. House cleaner, you'd be surprised at how many senior adults, they clean their own house. And so they move out and now they've got this house that needs to be cleaned top to bottom. They may not have someone to do that. And so you want to have that in your toolkit. Home repair contractor, that's kind of a typical realtor toolkit resource. So I'm not too worried about you having a good one, other than the fact they need to make sure that person also works well with seniors. Organizers and decorators. They're different. Obviously, organizers organize, decorators decorate, but sometimes they do both, and depending on what the client needs. For our clients, an organizer is sometimes necessary if they're wanting to take a whole lot of stuff and put it in a very small space. They may need an organizer to come in and help them make that work. They may need a decorator if they want more than just hanging pictures or more than just putting things around. They actually want someone to help them redecorate or match color schemes, things like that. So it's always good to have those folks in your toolkit as well. Donation sites. Let's talk about that. Between all of these that I've just listed so far, the most important ones are going to be your move manager, packers and movers, estate liquidators, and then donation sites. And the reason for donation sites is because so many people have more stuff than they need or want. They don't know what to do with it. And in many cases, in smaller homes in particular, they don't have enough stuff to warrant an estate sale. So it needs to be donated, in which case, if you can't help make that happen, then that house will sit there and nothing will happen, that no movement will take place because the client doesn't know what to do with the items in their home. And then, of course, pet care for people, especially on move day, because of just the stress that a pet can cause, not to mention safety issues. You're going to want to have an attorney, not only that you can call, but that you can recommend your clients call, particularly an elder law attorney, because a lot of our clients are struggling with things like powers of attorney, and they, in some cases, are needing to do some retirement planning, whether it's financial or otherwise. And also in some cases, when you're dealing with the house, if the client is in ill health or they have some mental health issues, it may be that the adult children are helping to advise and they don't have the necessary documentation, legal paperwork in place. So you're going to want to make that referral. And then, of course, financial advisors. If someone's moving out of a big house, particularly, let's say they've got more equity than they realized, and they're not purchasing another house, they've got this excess cash, and now they don't know what to do with it. And I'm amazed at how many people that you would think have some sort of financial guidance to help them, they don't. So having a reputable, trustworthy financial advisor to help someone is also a great way to add value to that client. So those are just a few, and there's a whole spreadsheet that we teach in our course. There's a whole spreadsheet of them, but these are the main ones that we use on a regular basis that most clients are going to benefit from us having. All right, so as if what I just talked about wasn't personalized enough, right? There is a difference between the way we do business now in real estate and the way people used to do business in real estate 20 years ago or 30 years ago, especially 40 or 50 years ago. And I know we hear statistics all the time, and that the senior population is the fastest growing group using the internet and all that, and that's so true. But that doesn't necessarily have the same meaning as it does to us, so as professionals. So when we think about using the internet, we think, oh, sure, electronic signatures, no big deal. Fill out a form online, press submit, get a response, no big deal. Put our credit card in, make a payment, buy something on Amazon, the box shows up tomorrow, no big deal. But some of our audience they haven't grown into that. They certainly didn't grow up with it, but they also haven't really had to experience it, because the internet in some cases came into the world at a high level after their retirement. So the lady on the screen there that you see, she is, at the time of that picture, she was 99. And we helped her move to a community when she was 97. She passed away about a few months before her 100th birthday. She never really used a computer. She didn't own one. She didn't own a smartphone. Matter of fact, I don't even think she had a cell phone. And so her adult children were very helpful. And but she wanted to sit down and go through the paperwork with pen and paper. And so that's what we do with all of our clients. If they want to do digital signatures, we certainly will make that happen. But at the end of the day, what we found is when we ask them which one they prefer pen and paper, and they prefer doing it in person. So those of you who are in markets where you do a lot of out-of-town business and everything's done via electronic signatures and email and so on, our clientele is almost all in person. And so we drive to them. We sit down, just like this picture, and we go over the paperwork with them, and they sign it right there with pen and paper. Then we go back and we scan it and provide it to them as a printed document in the mail or in person again. So now that isn't true for every client. Some clients are perfectly happy doing it electronically, but they still want to go over contracts and offers in person. So they'll say, let's go over it, and then you can shoot it to me in an email. I'll print it out, sign it, scan it, and send it back to you. When we say, well, we can do it electronically and all you have to do is click a button, they kind of go, I'm not sure about that, right? So they learned about PDFs and printing and scanning and those things, but digital signatures are new. And what's happening, and this is kind of a little background around this, is that a lot of people are being scammed, right? And so we teach classes on not getting scammed. And we're not the only ones teaching those classes. It's everywhere. AARP is always talking about it. They're reading about it. They're seeing it on the news. They're hearing about it from their banking institutions. So being scammed is one of those things nobody wants. And so to do digital signatures brings up that question mark of, should I be putting this personal information in a system that I'm not familiar with, even though my realtor told me it's perfectly safe? So anyway, just know that in person is going to be pretty common. And if you're going to survive the senior tsunami, you've got to be able to be adaptable and flexible enough to do that. And the last point is definitely not the least of the importance of these points. It's probably the most important one to me, and that is empowerment and advocacy. We as agents are oftentimes in a position to be the first person on the scene, if you will, when a senior is having problems. And I really didn't expect this when I first got into this back in the early 2000s. I really kind of thought, this would just be any other business transaction. But what I found is that we get the phone call from someone who says, I'm going to move. I need to talk to you about selling my home. And we show up and we get there, and that person is frail. Maybe they're having memory issues. Maybe they have an illness that's not being addressed. Maybe they're living in conditions that are not favorable. Maybe they are being scammed or they're being exploited by someone. But we get there and we may be caught off guard if we're not thinking, okay, this could be an issue. And then what do? Do we say, oh gosh, this is not for me, I'm just going to pass and leave and forget about it like it didn't happen? Or are we going to actually help people and do something about it? And so I think that there are 4 things here that I just wanted to bring to your attention, in addition to crisis or, things like that. But the first one is appearances can be deceiving. And how someone looks does not necessarily coincide with what their current circumstances might be. Point being, we recently had a client that we helped sell a home for. She's in her 90s. She is very well dressed, carries herself beautifully, very articulate, has no signs or symptoms of anything being wrong with her, nor was anything disclosed. But what we realized as we went through the process was that her memory was absolutely failing her. And so conversations that we had had multiple times, she didn't remember. And so we realized throughout the process that it was important to bring in someone that she could trust, someone outside of our organization, to be an advocate for her and to make sure that we were doing our job and that we are also covering ourselves to make sure that she understood what she was doing and that we weren't putting her in a bad position, right? So, and then you have people, by the way, that are the opposite. They look disheveled, they look frail, they look like they're not with it. And they are perfectly capable and perfectly able-bodied. And so it can go both ways. So just be conscientious of that and don't assume the way that someone looks is that is indicative of their abilities. So ethics, we all, are bound by the Code of Ethics by National Association of Realtors, as well as our local boards and our brokerages. But here's the thing. I think that we have the ability to go outside of our normal day-to-day business and make sure that other people are acting ethically also. Make sure that other service providers are acting ethically. What do I mean by that? Well, so think about, this is something we teach in the class for people who are going to specialize, but I'll just give you an example of, let's say you have a roofing company who goes out to give an estimate on a replacement roof for a client, and they say, the insurance is going to pay for this, and you have a deductible, and here's the estimate. They go, okay, great. And they say, well, by the way, while we're out here, let's go ahead and put leaf guards on your gutters, and this is the cost for that. And they upsell them on vent deodorizers, or they upsell them on whatever the case may be. It's an upsell that really isn't necessary, but because that person that they're talking with doesn't really understand what they're buying or whether they need it or not, and they just say yes, that is unethical, right? It's completely unethical. So what we look at is we try to say to our business partners, look, if there's something that they're inquiring about, let's make sure that they fully understand what it is they're saying yes to, or sometimes no to as well. Okay. So respecting your elders, this is a common thing I see pretty often, and that is someone may have complete respect for an older person, and yet they call them cute or adorable or sweet or hun and darling in our part of the world, right? And they speak to them like they're children. And that is not respectful. And some of our clients are retired executives, retired military officers. They are, graduate degrees, and they have all of this experience in life. And just because their bodies are beginning to look more frail or older does not mean that they are children. And so respecting our elders is also about how we communicate with our elders. And so treating them as a peer, as a business partner, as a business associate, or as a client, obviously as any client, we treat them with respect. And so I think just pay attention to the words that you use to describe older adult clients. And then last but not least, the advocacy, which I've kind of already talked about. But look at when you're working with older adults, what is your role as an agent? And then also, how can that role parlay into advocacy for older adults altogether? So, case in point, just as a reminder here, that minds are often very sharp and very intact despite appearances. And on the flip side, despite appearances, someone may not be thinking clearly. So just be conscientious of that and make sure if they're not thinking clearly that you help them get an advocate. All right, so in conclusion, as an agent, knowing that 1 in 4 sales are already involving someone over the age of 65, and that's only going to increase, you really have 3 ways that you can survive and thrive as you're working with this clientele. You can add to your toolbox. So that would be learning as much as you can, kind of like today's webinar about the things that will help seniors. We actually have a class. I'll kind of share with you about that one first. And then you could also specialize. So some of you may go, and you know what, this is right up my alley. I have a lot of senior clients, I already like them. I enjoy that. I feel like we connect. Then you may want to specialize. You want to make that a part of your business plan. It's what we did, and it made total sense for us. And then the third thing is when you come across those clients that are going to require extra resources, extra time, extra personalization, and you choose not to specialize or deal with them yourself, you can always refer them to a local professional. And of course, our certified senior housing professionals will work with you to make sure that that client is well taken care of. So for those who are thinking to themselves, well, I definitely want to make sure I'm equipped. I want to make sure my toolkit is full. Then we have a class for that. It's $149 right now. It's usually $199. It's serving the senior client. And it is complete with all the psychology behind why people move, what the obstacles are, and how to solve those problems. It takes what I talked about today and expands upon it significantly. Part 2 of our Success in Seniors Real Estate course is about specialization. And it's for people who are wanting to build a business working with seniors. So what we do in that part is talk about the 3 different platforms that you can build your business and how to do that successfully. So working with senior living communities, working with resource providers to get referrals, working in as an educator, doing seminars and building a public platform. So we have dozens and dozens of strategies that we teach in that course. And then as people finish those 2 courses, you have the option of getting certified. And to get certified, there is a complete blueprint that we provide for you to take. It's a self-study program, and you go through it step by step. For most people, it takes anywhere from 90 days to a year. But what we do is we teach you how to build that business, and then we give you the steps to do it, and you take those steps as you're getting your certification. So by the time you get your certification, ideally, you've got a pretty robust business model, and you're working with more and more senior clientele. So anyway, we have a bundle option too. You can see there, if you buy all 3 parts, you already know you're going to do all 3. You might as well buy all 3 parts, and you save about $100, and that's only $697. So instead of buying it one piece at a time, you can do it that way. All right, so for those of you who would like to learn a little bit more about how we did it, what we put in the course is how we did it, plus how others have done it. But we are going to do another webinar on December 13th. That is also from 1 to 2 o'clock. And we're going to just basically, I'm going to go through kind of from beginning to end. How did we decide to specialize? What were the first steps we took? What were our obstacles? What were the challenges? What were the blind spots? How did we solve those problems? And then and then what did we do when we did it a second time? So what did we do differently the second time that we didn't do the first time, and what did we learn? So anyway, if you're interested, you can go ahead and register for that on the website. And it's December 13th. And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and redirect you over to our website where you can register for these webinars. And that way you can just do it now and not have to worry about it. But yeah, for those people who are interested in one of our courses, you can go to successinsseniorsrealestate.com and you can take a look at what all of those courses include and make a decision which one makes the most sense for you, if any of them. And our goal is to build a community of people out there in the marketplace who are serving seniors at a high level. And the people who want to specialize even better, we want to welcome you to the community. And at the very least, we just believe that realtors need to know more about how to help our older adult clients. So thanks for being here today and taking part in this webinar. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Make it a great day.